Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. Today, Marvel Studios' Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And we're going to ask ourselves two questions, and I'm curious about your feedback as well if you watched the movie and even if you didn't. Well, one, does this movie advance the cause of people who look Asian but are living in predominantly non-Asian looking places? I put it as look Asian because people could have all kinds of ancestries inside of them, and yet others are just going to go on a few dominant stereotypes, if you will, to decide what racial category someone or another fits into. And two, what function do you see all these action movies and Marvel and DC and indeed just action movies in general playing in our society? So with The Legend of Ten Rings, we see a return to the screen of Asians in the role of martial artist. Now this brings me back to the 90s when I was at a university-college gym. And I don't make up or embellish, so I'm just going to tell you what I remember. So in this case, I was at the gym and I vaguely remember an incident where there was a young man who looked Asian and two non-Asian looking men behind him. And there was some comments that I was wondering, do I need to step in here? Well, I heard the friend of one of the two men making the comments towards the Asian-looking man say, and I'm quoting here, because this quote really stuck out in my mind. The friend, trying to talk his bullyish friend down, said, you better watch it, or he might pull some Bruce Lee, S-H-I-T, on your ASS. So again, I'm trying to keep the show wholesome, but you get the idea. You better watch it or he might pull some Bruce Lee on your And then his buddy kind of backed down. Now, in a sense, it would have been using humor to diffuse the situation, but that also said a lot to me about some ugly aspects of our human nature and the predatory instinct that some people give into. So many of you have probably heard that during this COVID epidemic, hate crimes against people who look Asian have spiked. Now, the statistics bear out, based on what I've heard in news reports, etc., listening to and reading, the statistics bear out that the majority of those assaults have been against the elderly and women. Very disturbing and very ugly. And that says something again about that predatory instinct that some people give into. And that racism, I think, is generally, or racial bullying and racial violence is in a sense, that predatory instinct looking for an easy target, the outnumbered looking person. And Asians in the United States are a very small percentage of this population. So now we come back to that 90s and that bully being checked by that Bruce Lee reference. Well, in those days, in my childhood and youth, one of the criticisms about the media and the roles of Asians is that they're really only given roles as martial artists or the goofy tourist, Japanese tourist, taking excessive amounts of photographs. And then for a long time after that, they were really getting no major roles. And the roles they did get were often the Asian actors were background or almost part of the setting. Like think about Apocalypse Now, a movie set in Vietnam, yet the Asian actors were all sort of in the scenery. So yes, this Legend of Shang-Chi resurrects the strong Asian character that we might have seen in Bruce Lee movies of the past. However, interestingly, most of the battles were Asian on Asian violence or Asians against monsters, or fantastical beasts. Now, if I've got this correct, the only non-Asian actor defeated, or the non-Asian character defeated by an Asian character had an Eastern European accent. Again, going towards those common stereotypes, what the audience expects, the Russian as the bad guy. So here, yes, we're seeing stronger Asian characters, but their dominance and their victories are limited to Asian on Asian violence or Asian versus monster violence. Still kind of that dominant paradigm. We're not seeing Asian characters defeating non-Asian characters. Now, what are your thoughts on the media and these action movies in general on our society? Well, my thoughts on them is that they generally promote an otherizing and sort of a war mentality. And in a sense, they help lay the groundwork for war in our culture. The opponents often are depicted as foreign, having Eastern European accents or that type of thing, or foreign to the English-speaking world, or they're nebulous, sort of demonic or interdimensional creatures of some sort. And worse, sometimes the villains, and this is kind of an often repeating trope, the villains are actually people who are trying to protect or make a better future or protect the environment. And here I specifically come to mind to a movie that Samuel Jackson was in, where he played a kind of a strange professor scientist character trying to set a virus to quell or limit human population as a response to global warming, portraying someone who cares about the environment as someone to be suspicious of, a villain. Now, similarly, in one of the Godzilla movies, as I recall, the Godzillas were being resurrected by people trying to, again, sort of check human destruction of the environment. So again, we see someone trying to protect the environment made into a villain. But you can think for yourself, how many movies have you seen where those wanting to make a better world are misguided and they're really the bad people? So this gets us to just what is the function of media in general. So you should always start your analysis, or a good way to start your analysis. I won't tell you what you should do, but a good way to start your analysis is just consider that all of our major media outlets are owned by large corporations and large businesses, and they're going to have ties to advertisers, sponsors, and other business interests. So in a sense, you could think of them all as sort of defending or supporting business as usual, and look for that kind of messaging in their movies. Well, I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic and others of my videos, and until next time, I hope you're subscribed and you're liking, giving a thumbs up. Constructive criticism is welcome. Largely volunteer effort here, and peace be with you.